to this event. From 6 to 8 p.m. at the Amesbury High School. Item A on the agenda is public comment. Anybody here like to make a public comment? None, we'll move on. Item B is board, commission, and committee updates, and that's why you are all here. So, okay, ready? Elisa, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so we've not done this before. This is an effort to try to bring all the boards and committees together. The select board meets annually to talk about goals, what our priorities are, and we thought we would share the process and the outcome with you and try to get input from all of you on behalf of your boards and committees. So we'll go to the next slide. So this is what we're hoping to get out of it. First is just to establish a common knowledge base. Some of you are brand new, sitting to my right. And then we have some that have been in town government and board chairs for a pretty long time. So just so that we all have an understanding of how the boards and committees work within town. As I said, we want to share our current and future project list, our priority list, and that's in the handout. And then update the list as needed. We do want feedback from you and your boards and committees. So this is, what we're proposing. We'll take the feedback and consider that at a later time. I think the most important thing is to bring all the boards and committees in town kind of into alignment on priorities. For a long time, before we had a town manager, we had silos of committees all throughout town, and there wasn't a lot of collaboration. And that's really important to Angus and this board to try to, and I think that's been happening over the last few years. We've kind of moved away from that, but we think it could be even more productive if we're all in alignment with what's important to the town. So just kind of an overview of boards and committees and commissions. That's what the BCC acronym is for. We have 7 elected boards and commissions. One of those is the select board. I mean, our role is a little bit different because we are the executive branch of town government. The duties listed in sub-bullets there are some of the things that we are responsible for that impact other boards and committees. We appoint 20 boards, committees, and commissions, and some personnel, the town manager, the town accountant, and the police chief. So over the last year, we've made a conscious effort to try to improve that process with boards and committees, being really mindful about who we're appointing, not just appointing whoever's been there. We went through a process. It took most of the year of sending a questionnaire to each of the appointed boards and committees, trying to find out what they think their charge is, what the objectives are, what they've accomplished, and then we had them into a select board meeting and discussed it. So elected boards didn't have that privilege of appearing before us, but maybe we can work something out. The other items that the select board is responsible for: collective bargaining entity, that's the police and dispatch and the DPW unions, or any union that comes to town. Under statute, we are responsible for setting salaries and wages. So even as a committee, if you put something in your budget, it still has to be approved by the select board and be within the context of staffing, structure, and compensation. The select board contracts legal counsel on behalf of boards and committees. And then finally, we are responsible for establishing policies that are binding on employees, including the town manager and all the staff that report to him. So I guess this final bullet is just, most new employees that come to town say, oh, man, you have a lot of committees in this town. And so that's kind of, anecdotal, it's not empirical. But I think it's not just the high number of boards and committees, it's that they're so engaged. I mean, we have a lot of citizens who are really interested in their topic or their committee and a lot of energy, want to do projects, which is tremendous. the challenge is that sometimes that, disrupts the normal workflow and it makes it difficult to move ahead with established priorities and work plan. So that's kind of what we're grappling with tonight. I want to share with you. So this table, which is in your handout, if you can't read that font, one of the other things we did this year was assign each of the three of us to every board and committee, even elected boards, and to act as the liaison with that board or committee. And so that doesn't mean we're going to be at every meeting, but I think we've each made an effort to be at some meetings. Also, if you can refer to this is the person you can reach out to if you have concerns about anything in town or questions about how to move forward with something. So it's meant to be kind of a two-way street. Again, just to try to promote collaboration between the boards and committees. So this table shows the staffing support for boards and committees. Some it's obvious. The Board of Assessors, they have the chief assessor working for them. So this middle column is the lead staff position. That's not the entirety of who supports that board. There are a lot of other staff positions that also provide support, but this is the primary person. On the right-hand column is the elected boards and committees that these people support. And then on the left is the appointed boards and committees. And you can see some staff positions support quite a few different boards and committees. The asterisk in there, those are committees that Angus, as town manager, is an ex officio member. So he is supporting and going to a lot of committee meetings. Any questions on that? The one that's not filled in is the Historic District Historical Commission. That's something that we're working on. Hopefully over the next month, we will have a staff level person assigned to that position. So before we get started on FY 25 and 26, we just want to take a few minutes to look back at what we accomplished in FY 24. These are the high level items. We've really carried out an incredible amount of work last year. Angus, do you mind speaking to these?
Sure, briefly. So Middle Street Bridge, obviously that's been underway for, at least 6 years. FY 24 was a huge series of milestones between obtaining two separate state grants, one for $1 million, one for $750,000. And also Newbury Port obtained another $750,000, which we really had a key role in. That resulted directly from the actions we took with DOT. And then more recently over the summer, following really, I will say, years of negotiation between the town and the city council, the city council unanimously agreed to an intermunicipal agreement, agreeing to fund 50% of the net of this grant cost. So it's fully funded, it's out to bid. Bids are due October 1st. So that's a huge accomplishment for the past year. AAA bond rating that happened about a little over a year ago, but that's huge for the town. Right now, we don't have any debt, but when we do go to market to borrow, we're going to get the most favorable borrowing terms because of that AAA bond rating. And our auditor has been telling us for years, towns this size just don't get AAA ratings. So even if you're extremely financially healthy, so the fact that we did, and we got it from both Standard & Poor's and Moody's, is really testament to a lot, many years of great work from the finance department. Restructuring DPW was a major initiative last year, with Butch promoted a highway superintendent, Brian promoted a facilities manager, and Caitlin Barker promoted to DPW business manager and chief procurement officer. That is basically in lieu of a DPW director. It has worked out really, really well. And we're seeing tremendous productivity and accomplishment from the public works. But that was kind of a entrepreneurial thing that we undertook, and it's worked out very well. The employee compensation structure, the wage reclassification study, that was a major effort. In some respects, that's still somewhat a work in progress, but that we're way better off than the town had been for many years, and that had been a priority going back to 2018, and it took a few years to get that done. River Road Resiliency Planning, the MVP Action Grant, was the highlight in FY24. And enormous amount of work got done in a period of about 9 or 10 months. We had originally applied for it on a 2-year grant, and it was 2 years worth of work, and the state gave us the grant, said, you gotta get it done by June 30th. We didn't have a signed contract with the grant, with the Commonwealth until September. So we had basically 9.5 months to do about 21 months of work, and staff and committee, volunteers and residents and this board and others stepped up, put in a huge amount of effort. And we have a lot to show for it, with a lot more work ahead, but it was definitely an accomplishment. Made some staffing adjustments, in both the kind of in the office and in the field. And that's really paid off. I would definitely say at this point, we are properly staffed for what we are doing. People are very, very busy, but it's not like it was a couple of years ago where people were very busy and just, I mean, we're busy. We're very busy, but we're not in triage mode every hour of every day, which all of you who worked for me the first 4.5 years, I mean, it was just an accident waiting to happen. And so that's been it's very nice to say that we really have a strong team. Page school conditions assessment isn't complete yet, but the draft is complete. It's been it's in review. There's going to be major public meeting over the winter on that, and that's something that's been on the drawing board for years and has been a huge effort. And then the Main Street corridor planning, that's a very long-term effort. That's going to take, you know, a while before people see the results in the field. But it's, you know, dealing with transportation planning on a state corridor is a multi-step, multi-cycle, and we do actually have the Page Pipe Stave crosswalk is right on the verge of getting 100% design approval from Mass DOT. So that's almost ready to put out to bid. So there's been some very tangible progress there.
So this pyramid is just one way of looking at the work plan for town government. This is something that Angus has shared with prior select boards as well as us. And I think it's a good way to kind of frame the conversation. That bottom piece, the blue, is just the baseline functions that town employees have to perform day in and day out, you know, as well as kind of long-term projects. And that's mandated, you know, by statute or bylaws. Also, just required for effective operations of town government. Then that next purple tier is, you know, value added. So these are expanded level of service. That's not part of the baseline, that proactive planning, zoning, that kind of thing, obtaining grants. And then at the very top, which, you know, ideally is the smallest portion of the work plan, it's just things that come up that you can plan on. Either it's a crisis or something unplanned. And it's not like optional, like you cannot do it. It has to be worked into the work plan. So I just want to drill down a little bit on the baseline functions.
Sure. Here we go.
Thank you. So as I said, that's the day-to-day operations of town government, collecting taxes, you know, permit issuing, that kind of thing. It does include mandates by outside regulatory agencies. And then items that are necessary for efficient operation. These are things that Angus and his staff has said, you know, if we could do this, it would make our, you know, operations much more efficient, and it would, you know, make things more streamlined. That fourth bullet, articles voted by a town meeting, you know, that could have been an optional project, but once it's voted at town meeting, I mean, we feel like it's required, then it has to become part of the baseline workload so that we satisfy the voters. So this baseline section, that blue base of the pyramid, ideally that's what determines our staffing levels. That doesn't always work out, but you don't want to staff up to address all the value added stuff, because you would end up with more staff than was necessary. I think most importantly, you can't squeeze out these baseline functions, either the value added work or the crisis work. I mean, that blue at the bottom, that's static. That has to be met, you know, whether or not anything else comes up. So, and then another thing that Angus initiative that he's spearheaded is organizing our work plan into 4 functional areas. And he has working groups among the department's staff in these areas. And then we've also adopted that approach to these projects and initiatives. So that's, you know, finance and administration, infrastructure, public planning and land management, and then public service. So these next 3 slides are in your handout. This is a pretty small font. But this just to give you a sense of what these baseline functions are and how much there is. So in finance and administration, this is this page and part of the next. These are all the day-to-day stuff as well as the longer term, the wage and classification study that I just mentioned. The Whittier Regional Agreement, that's been on the radar quite a bit. Personnel administration, policy updates, health insurance for employees. These are all things that you may not think about on a board committee, but they're things that have to get done. Town meetings is a huge one. It's not just being at the town meeting, it's preparing all the materials, all the warrant article, the approval process, working with town council. On the infrastructure, this is a smaller group, but these are nonetheless critical. MOU with Newbury Port regarding the bridge. We're right in the middle of getting the phone system replaced, and that's been a high priority, as well as annual updates to our capital improvement plan. Anybody have questions on any, feel free to just ask if you have questions that you don't understand what it refers to. So the next one, and then these last two are also smaller, but planning and land management. Probably the biggest one on here is the MBTA communities planning and zoning initiative that everyone's probably well aware of. Updating our open space and recreation plan, that's a requirement every 7 years. The mitigation plan, hazard mitigation plan, updating stormwater bylaw. Some examples. And then finally on public services, the Affordable Housing Trust has a home repair grant program that has to be administered. The JR Library has a 5-year plan, a strategic plan that is going to be implemented. Municipal energy. Anything you want to board members? So again, I mean, if you have questions, we can talk about it. This is just to share with you the baseline work that the town is doing. Judy?
Talking about the MBTA community planning, I know there was some litigation by other towns.
Mhm.
Do you know where that is?
It's still in progress. The target is the end of October. Some of that litigation is very specific to the towns and probably is not relevant to us, but yeah. Yeah, that shakes out.
Oh, Wendy, this is Fred Shinanya. I had a question.
Yep.
So one of the baseline, just lower your volume for a minute. One of the earlier slides said that one of the baseline services is stuff that comes up from the warrant articles. And what I noticed is that the town has been gracious enough to spend over the last couple of years, I think close to over $100,000 for the to manage the roadway trees for both the assessments and then the injections and now the removals. And I just didn't happen to see it in the last 3 slides. So I'm wondering how you're displaying things that come up through the warrant articles in terms of these particular lists of projects.
So these are the baseline functions. When we talk about the priority projects and the different timeframes, those include some of these projects. So I'm drawing a blank on
Well, there's Ash Tree Management
Ash,
Plan.
yeah. That's something different. That's for the road. So that'll come in a future slide, Fred, is what I'm saying. All right, so move on. So just, we talked about the baseline function. I just want to talk about the red zone at the top. So this kind of work is really driven by factors outside our control. A lot of times prior town operations, whether it's the approach or perhaps errors were made, we have to try to pick up and deal with that. Outside agencies, sometimes boards and committees and commissions, as I said, they're engaged and energetic because they're moving ahead with projects that there may not be coordinated with town staff, that creates some unplanned work. That's not a crisis. But then also the resident level of service expectations. We have a lot of residents who are, very vocal in what they want, and, so that, nobody on staff wants to say no to a resident or board or committee, so that makes it challenging to stay within the work plan and also be responsive to outside, requests.
One thing, a lot of these unplanned and crisis things are executive session, you'll never hear about. Every time I get an email from Angus, you just gotta cringe before you open it, because you don't know what it's gonna be. And it seems simple enough, but then it's weeks of work to unwind generally things that have happened in the past. So to say unplanned, you see only a small percent, not a small percentage, a certain percentage of that. There's a lot more going on that you and most townspeople won't even know about. It takes up a lot of his time and the town's time.
Yeah, I guess that leads to the second point there, that a lot, on a week-to-week basis, this unplanned work really plays a large role in both Angus and his staff's time, so that definitely impacts other priorities and projects.
What is BCC up to?
Boards, commissions, and committees.
Oh,
That's our favorite acronym. Angus, do you want to give some examples that aren't out of executive session? Can you,
Yeah, sure. Just a couple of things. So one thing, last winter, we had some masonry falling off the front of Page School, like right above the front entrance. That is a crisis. That's the kind of thing, it happens. It's like, you gotta, and obviously we were at that point, months into this, overall conditions assessment of Page School, knowing there's issues, but literally chunks of, border like that on the stairs. So, so that sets into motion a whole series of things. We signed an expanded scope with the architect to basically understand what was going on. We were concerned about other window sills and whether there's similar structural concerns there. So they evaluated those, they took one down. Come to find out that the supporting material for the window sills on Page School is not rebar. It was actually like a hollow metal pipe that had completely rusted out, like completely corroded. It was not built properly in the first place. So that led to a follow-on scope to evaluate all of the window sills on Page School. And so we, we've hired a contractor who's been out there all summer under the oversight of both our facilities manager, Brian Richard, but also under the oversight of the architects who actually, scoped out the work, helped with the bidding process, helped with contractor selection, and they've been on site inspecting the work. Obviously, the building inspector is closely involved, our procurement officer, and our project manager. So that's the kind of thing, it happens. I hesitate to guess how many hundreds of man hours that has implicated, but it's a lot. So that's one. Last summer, a year ago, obviously we had some historic rain. Everyone, I think has their own experience of that, but people may be aware there were some really extreme impacts of that on some properties. That generated lots of meetings, lots of discussion. We looked at studies, we looked at potentially funding. We looked at a lot of things. So yeah, serious rain events, triggers lots and lots of work, all of which is fine. We don't begrudge that. That's what we're here to do. But it necessitates having some amount of slack in our schedule so that we can respond to those things as they come up, because they come up. More recently, we've got Mark is in the thick of this right now, but there's, some issues with the Break Hill water tank, and that needs repairs. And that's, we've learned in the last 2 weeks, and that's now something we write about just about every single day. We're working on that, and it's quite important. Just a couple of others, people may be aware if you're on social media with the Sawmill Brook land acquisition, there was an encroachment that led to engaging surveyors, engaging legal, working with the abutting property owner and their legal counsel. They've been terrific to work with. But that led to how many meetings and how many discussions with the select board, with the Concom, and the remedy for that is an adverse possession claim, which is a friendly claim. the board and the property owner agreed these boundaries are what the property should be, but that's now working its way through the court. You know, that one issue probably implicated easily 100 hours of staff time, easily, probably a couple of 100 hours. You know, I mentioned earlier the River Road grant. We applied for a 20 months of work, $200,000 grant. The state awards it, but says you got to be done by June 30th, 2024. It's like, okay, so we did, but needless to say, we had to push aside some other things that we had hoped to get done last year because we were putting an enormous amount of bandwidth toward River Road. I mean, this is more recent, but you know, this kind of stuff happens. On mid-August, we had MEVA, the Regional Transit Agency, presented to this board and said, we're running new bus service and it's starting the day after Labor Day. And can you tell us where the bus stops would be? And Butch was awesome. He sprung into action. He worked with Dwyer and, you know, but like on 2.5 weeks notice, you know, okay, we did it. We responded. We do this stuff all the time. And one last one, I don't know if this counts as a crisis, but the Whittier special election last winter, when last fiscal year began, that wasn't on many of our work plans. That wasn't on any of our radar. How many hundreds of hours did that implicate? So those are just a few, just and all recent, I mean, you know, but
Yeah.
it happens every day. There's little ones that happen every day. I mean, Doug helped avert one yesterday with regard to a scheduling snafu, and that got resolved. It got resolved within a couple of hours of learning about it, but it, you know, it happens every single day.
Yeah, so they're not necessarily bad, it's just that they're not part of the plan, so you have to drop everything.
Right, right.
So this is just for those of you that are visual, this is what happens to our pyramid when all those unplanned, work, projects get landed, that the value added, because we've already said the baseline can't shrink, that means the value added portion of our work plan has to shrink. So these value added projects, I mean, they're important, but, you know, we have finite staff resources, so that means we have to prioritize them. And not necessarily what we're gonna do and not gonna do, but what we're gonna do first, and then what's gonna be done next year and the year after that. So to try to get our arms around this, the select board compiled a complete list, 106 projects, everything that we knew about, heard about, you know, read on your board and committee questionnaire, just to try to get everything down on paper, you know, as the first step. Then assign it to one of those 4 functional areas so that we can look at what staff support would be needed for them. And then I guess the most critical piece of this is designating a time frame. So the time frames we chose were immediate, which means it's already underway. This was as of July when we had our meeting, or that it's going to begin by the end of December. The near-term category would be the second half of the fiscal year from January to June of 25. And then longer term, starting with these projects, that would begin in FY 26, which is July of 25, or FY 27. So really, this is not meant to be a static document. Obviously, things are gonna come up that might vault right into the immediate time frame, but this is really kind of a management tool so that we can optimize staff time and try to, you know, manage these things instead of always being in reactive mode. So these are the lists. So this first slide is the immediate term projects and initiatives. You can see the second column has an X if it's on the baseline work plan. And Fred, this is what I was trying to speak to before, that not all of the required projects were on that matrix of the baseline. This is where you would see a town meeting warrant article project that's approved. It would be in the required column there. So just to call out some that are, you know, either taking a lot of time or, you know, kind of high visibility right now. Renewing union contracts is taking a lot of time for the select board and the people on the negotiating committee. Finishing up our wage classification study. Water financial plan is really a critical piece of planning for the future for our water supply. I just mentioned the Middle Street Bridge, the phone system. MBTA communities planning is going to be a huge effort in the coming year. Any questions or input on this list from anybody that may be impacted by the projects? Okay, so you can see most of these are required baseline, which makes sense if they're in the immediate category, you know, they're already going where they need to go. The next category is the near-term projects, and you can see fewer of these are baseline or required. But these are all slated to start, in the next, half of this fiscal year. Updating the open space plan, that's gonna be an article, I think, for fall town meeting. Pickleball feasibility study, which was a warrant article that was approved last time. It's not marked as a baseline or required project, but, you know, but we feel an obligation to get that on the work plan because it was approved by town meeting. Either of you want to highlight
Yeah.
it or?
Number 73, update for a new comprehensive master plan. It's long overdue. I've been pushing for it, but understanding we haven't had the capacity, so. It's just one line item there. That's gonna take a massive amount of time from probably everybody in this room and a number of people in the town. And hopefully it's coming up sometime.
This right here is a useful document for that.
Yeah, we have a slide for that.
Okay. It was right there and it's kind of sleeping, so
Yep.
just making sure you see
For
it.
sure.
But that is just gonna be the start time too, because it'll extend out long.
It'll take at least a week to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we can move on to the long term. So this is 2 pages here, this, documents. So these are all, you know, some of these are required or part of the work plan. The JR Library 5-year strategic plan, obviously, is a required item. The Whittier Regional Agreement, that's something, our board as well as, town officials and boards in other towns in the Whittier region are working on right now. The Mill Pond All Access Trail was something that, Open Space and Mill Pond were both very interested in. And the commercial vehicle exclusion, that's fairly new. That's something for River Road that, yeah, Ray.
In all kinds of planning documents, it said that West Newbury has 2 town centers. So when I look at traffic calming, I assume you're talking about this town center here with post office, but
Where is the other town center? Here?
the training group
Interesting.
where the library is. And it strikes me, there have been a number of accidents over the years there. That's another area, you know, where some traffic calming might be.
Mhm.
This is Lisa Grammer. I didn't see anything about the maintenance of the town-owned cemeteries. I may have missed it, but I didn't see anything about it. Is it not on, or is it, where is that?
So it's,
The baseline.
yeah, it doesn't, specify town owned. If there is something about, basically, having a sustainable plan for cemetery.
At the bottom of, that's 101, sustainable long-term plan for cemeteries, O&M capacity.
That's what's on the next page.
Yeah, okay, yeah, here we
okay.
go. Yeah.
Because there are warrant articles outstanding of work that was supposed to be done in the spring and hopefully will be done in the fall.
For the Quaker Cemetery?
Yeah, actually, I believe the warrant article was for both. The Alms House Cemetery is in pretty good shape, and I've been the one doing that maintenance. But I can't do the Quaker Cemeteries too much.
Okay. Fred, you mentioned the Emerald Ash Borer treatments and tracking. That's number 61 here on the list. You know, I don't know, perhaps that should be a required or a baseline if it was, but that's the kind of feedback we're looking for tonight. So,
Yeah, and since that's ongoing, you might change what slide that goes on.
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things shown in the longer term that are actively going on today. This was more, kind of reflects the select board's direction to me in terms of me and staff in terms of what to prioritize, so. But it's not an exact science, obviously.
I'm real impressed by all this. This is great stuff. Yeah, are these slides gonna be available that I can provide a link to the other planning board
Yep.
members?
yeah, we just wanted to wait and kind of present a context, you know. for it, so. Okay, there's no questions, we can just move on, just have a couple slides left. So, one of our thoughts is that, it's great to organize all these projects, but if we, as a group, could agree on what the overarching issues are, and, that would help us, help the select board and town manager establish their own priorities. We do have some lingering projects that we can't get resolution on, the use of the Mullen properties, then up over and over again, Soldiers and Sailors Building, the Page School, what's gonna happen with that? And then, water source and intermunicipal agreements, that's been on the radar forever, so. I don't know if other people have thoughts on what lingering projects that, we might wanna focus on, or, what overall issues should we be looking at to determine priorities? One might be impacts of climate change or increasing the diversity of our housing stock. If we agreed that was our top priority, then that would help the select board focus on priorities and individual projects and that.
Elisa did raise her hands on.
Okay. Elisa?
Actually, I was trying to unraise it. I wasn't sure which way it was, but I would say climate change. Climate change, I think, ought to be an overarching because it implicates a lot of different things. The ability of people to manage heat, particularly the elder population, the roads we've already seen, it implicates a lot of issues. The schools, do they need air conditioning? Page School doesn't have it.
Yeah, thanks. Great.
When it comes to establishing priorities, you guys have probably thought this through already, and just the fact that you're using the word crisis makes sense to me, but when it comes to priorities, there's, in my mind, there are things that if you don't get them done, something deteriorates or causes a safety problem. And those are your highest priority items. And those have to be addressed right away. After that, things that will cause problems in the future if they're not addressed, whether there's degradation and whatnot. So trying to look at public safety and degradation of infrastructure and facilities. Those are things that come to my mind right away for establishing priorities.
One I didn't see up in any of this is maintaining the rural agricultural nature of the town.
Would you think that would be a kind of an overarching issue for the town?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, certainly in the open space and recreation plans, the survey they did identify that as one of the top priorities.
And always has, every survey.
It's master plan in 99, that was our number one takeaway.
So that concern informs planning board decisions all the time.
Right.
For example, I imagine other boards are hypersensitive to that. Sensitive.
Any others?
I would just think the Page School would be fairly high up on the list, determining what you're gonna do with it before if you're gonna not keep it, then you don't wanna spend all these millions of dollars, many more millions of dollars. Maintaining it.
Yeah, for upgrading.
Yeah, that's a pretty active conversation right now, what direction are we gonna go and at what time, at what point are we throwing the money after that?
That's also one of those decisions where you need the whole town to weigh in.
Right.
Right now, the timeline we're on with the conditions assessment is, there's a draft that's in circulation. There's a couple of things that, there's an enormous amount in the draft, but there's definitely some areas that, as we've all reviewed it, we feel we'd like it to go deeper on different aspects, that weren't in the initial scope. So the vendor, we've provided them all our comments, and they're addressing everything that's within scope, and everything that's not in scope, they're gonna provide a proposed amendment of the scope. We expect to have that for the September 26th board meeting. Because we want to fill any of those gaps. So just a couple of examples, there's something in there about septic, but that was never part of the scope, is to do a deep dive on the condition of the septic or what it would cost to replace the septic. you know, that's one example, there's others, but the goal is to get that complete and addressing any of those shortcomings by the end of the calendar year. And what we've talked about, what the board's talked about is in ideally January or very early calendar year 2025, to have the complete complete report that's been fully vetted, gone through many revisions. And then we've talked about like a town-wide mailing, like in the mail, like, hey, there is going to be a big meeting on such and such date, to get hopefully hundreds and hundreds of people there, because it's an enormous conversation. It's perhaps, you know, it's one of the most consequential conversations the town will have in the next 20 years. And so to basically have that everybody who lives in town knows that there's a conditions assessment that's complete, they can, you know, read it, they can process it, and then come together and you know, advance that discussion. We've talked about it, that we think it'll probably take, once we hit that milestone, it may well take 18 to 24 months for the community to make a decision. Maybe it won't, but it could, because there's that much there, and there's, you know, a lot of people have, you know, it's not gonna start a consensus, it's gonna start not consensus. So, but basically we anticipate that's gonna take a huge amount of bandwidth once the study's complete, to kind of get a community conversation to where there's some kind of hopefully broad agreement about how to move forward. And in the meantime, things like this, you know, the work that is being done there is really public safety related. Things like this masonry, where really there's not, you know, because in any scenario, even if the town decides to go in a new direction with that property, we're in there for another 10 years by any measure. So there are some Band-Aid things that need to happen regardless.
Right?
I hesitate to mention this because I love the page school and I hate to see the town not keep it. But as part of some of the stuff I did as a structural civil engineer was earthquake resiliency, and unreinforced masonry is one of the most dangerous ways to build a structure when it comes to earthquake resistance. So my question here is that at all part of the condition assessment?
It absolutely is. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually been talked about right from the scoping. Our building inspector and you know, Lisa was part of that working group to prepare the scope that was put out to bid, and that issue of seismic resilience, yeah, was part of the conversation right from the start. And it is not reinforced, and it is not insulated.
Yeah, it's
not a lot of other things.
No, and then there are other things that it is that are not good.
But to Ray's point about when things start degrading, so that's why they didn't replace the lentils, they removed them and they stopped them. We didn't rebuild them to what they would be if you were gonna renovate the building. So we're just trying to stop any further catastrophic failures until the town decides what they want to do. We don't wanna go dumping a ton of money in there knowing that we don't know what we know.
In an ideal world, everything that we do right now would fail the same day as the day after the last child walked out the door. Not likely to work that way.
All right, any other inputs? Ellie?
Water should be a huge priority.
Water independence, I assume you mean?
Just making sure that we have affordable, accessible water. And I think that if we are looking for new wells and looking to expand the access, maybe we should also be allowing people who have wells to tap into that system.
which of course means considering PFAS. I noticed it was PFAS are the forever chemicals that are in water supplies all around the world. And I noticed that there was a line item for litigation with respect to that, but I'm not sure.
So we have, filed as part of the class action lawsuit.
Yeah, so we're at the discovery stage right now, and Mark's Department of Health have been providing any documentation they have of any costs incurred over the years. That's all been provided provided the attorney through the class action lawsuit, so.
Lisa, as our token non-board committee chair, would you like to add what you think might be a priority or an issue for the town?
Well, I mean, I second, Richard about, having, open space and, even going a little bit further, maybe saying, available farmland and, food sovereignty for the town as well. Thinking about pandemics and the possibility of something like that happening again. And the ability for the town to be able to provide some of its own food, fodder for animals, that kind of thing. I think it's something we kind of overlook and should be looked at in that overarching idea of having open space, maintaining the town's agricultural feel as well.
Great, thanks. So I guess that leads us to the final bullet, which is the comprehensive plan. We had tentatively identified this for FY 26, thinking that perhaps we'll bring an article to spring town meeting next year. But as Chris alluded to, that's going to require a lot of effort by all of our boards and committees as well as town staff. So one of our thoughts here and trying to get our arms around this workload is we really have to kind of clear the decks of some of these initiatives and projects because we're going to have to spend a lot of time on the comprehensive plan. So,
And a lot of what is being done on the corridor plan, open space and rec, affordable housing, housing production plan, the housing mitigation plan, all of that's going to inform a comprehensive planning process. So a lot of what's being done is going to provide a really good foundation for that. But yeah, Wendy's exactly right that some of the discrete projects, I'll pick an easy example, the Coffin Street culvert replacements. I mean, there's a bunch of things that we just got to stay focused, get those things so they're done, so that we're not, because we don't want to start something we can't finish. We don't want to start a comprehensive planning process when staff are already like at the red line with all the stuff we're doing. So we have to stay focused on what we're doing, kind of clear what we can. We're always going to be busy, but we're pretty extraordinarily busy. So that's kind of the goal. MBTA community is another one. I mean, that's going to take up a lot of bandwidth as it did last year. It's going to again, it is as we speak, but it really will, as you know, in the winter and spring. So.
It's got a hard deadline where you're forced to deal with that, whether we want to or not.
You got it right, yeah.
yeah.
Clearing the decks, I think, is admirable and impossible.
Yes.
We want to move in that direction.
But there are some specific things that are, the Middle Street Bridge, fingers crossed, if the bids come in within budget, contracts awarded this calendar year, they break ground in the spring, it's gonna take 2 years for them to build it. But at that point, it's largely like, it's not a big bandwidth issue, but right now, just even since the intermunicipal agreement was approved in, I forget if it was July, I think it was July, maybe early August, something like that. The amount of time to put together the bid documents, get that out to bid. Once we get the bids, that's gonna take many dozens of hours to review the bids, check the references, draw up the contract. Like, we have to stay so focused on that project because we have to get it under contract this calendar year in order to use some of the federal funding that the board has allocated toward it. It has to be under contract by December 31st, or we lose that federal funding and the whole thing falls apart. So yeah, it's like, these things don't just happen. They take tons of time and we're on track, but that's what I think we're trying to convey. So we have to stay focused on the identified priorities, because there's not a lot of margin for error on some of these things.
No. I think also along those lines is, taking on new projects that aren't part of this work plan. We have to be very, cautious about even small projects take a certain amount of staff time, so that's one of the things we really want to focus on.
One project the one thing that hasn't come up is access to West Newbury. Middle Street Bridge is part of it, but we've got that one's closed. You've got the Rocks Village Bridge, which is fine until the next truck goes
Could be
over it.
close, yeah.
And you got Ash, and you've seen my map that shows, Georgetown Road should be reopened. Crane Neck used to go through, Emery Street used to go through, and there's all these places that have been shut down over the years that, as kind of a long-term plan, we should try to reopen some of the access just in case Rocks Village goes down, or, the bridge, 113 bridge to Newbury Port goes down for some reason, that we have alternate routes to the town that we've closed over the last century.
Yeah, that would be part of a comprehensive plan, wouldn't it?
Yeah, another thing I was gonna add relative to comprehensive plan and clearing the decks. There could be a number of things exactly like that, or the done master plan, that are better served after the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
So maybe we go through the list and pull some of those out, that these are off the table for now too,
I too.
because you get a better resolution as to how to proceed once you get the overview of everything. So that's another way to clear the decks a little too.
Yeah. All right, so next steps, I mean, we are seeking input from you on these projects and priorities. For those of you who are remote, I'll send a copy of what was shared tonight in paper. I think our next meeting is the 26th. If you have any feedback, if you can get it to us by then, you can just send it to the select board email address. I'm not saying we'll update, make all the changes that you would like, but we'll consider them and see if we can, kind of work in your priorities as well. The other thing we'd like to do is try to identify opportunities for boards and committees, to, provide some of your own labor to get the projects you're interested in done, but we need to do that carefully so that we're not putting a high burden on staff. So we'll take that under advisement. As I said, this is not static, as new things come up, we'll have to kind of figure out which time frame they belong in, the context of the overall plan. And then, we annually update this list, so I think it's reasonable to have an annual meeting with all the board and committee chairs. I mean, because we really want this to be kind of a, united, effort. And if we're going ahead with a comprehensive plan, we're gonna be seeing a lot of each other anyway, so.
That based on another survey of the committees, you think?
That we would move ahead.
To update the list, is that based on another structured process of gathering that? Or
I think the list is there. I mean, if, we intend to continue the questionnaire process, maybe not as detailed as we did this year, but just to kind of stay updated with what you're talking about at the committee level and priorities, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would think that there'd be an update, sort of an annual update of those questionnaires, because obviously new ideas come up, things change, new ideas come up.
For those of you that are elected boards, on the questionnaire was, first 1 year goal, 2 year goal, 5 year goals, that kind of thing, so. I don't know if the elected boards and committees would consent to filling one out, but, there's no reason we can't invite everybody to, even if you're not appointed on the select board.
Wendy, if I could add just one point to, that I think is relevant to what was said about, kind of keeping updated is, let me just do a screen share, make sure everyone can see this. So one thing people may or may not know, but if you don't know, I want to make sure everybody knows, is that the select board does post the meeting packets for every single meeting prior to the meeting taking place. And this is a really tremendous resource. It requires some amount of self-help. There's not like a searchable index of, like, if you wanted every time the Middle Street Bridge was discussed, we don't have like an index. But just to give an example, I'll pick some random meeting. Oh, that's not a good, that's one topic meeting, but let's pick, so basically, if you see, hopefully all of the chairs and really all the committee members, but at least the chairs, if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to the select board agendas, keep an eye on those. They're quite detailed. They're very, transparent in terms of what's being discussed. And some of it's very routine, week in, week out stuff, but if the board's discussing really everything's on here. So it's a great way for chairs to keep your ear to the ground on what's going on. And, you know that the day of the meeting, or typically the day before the meeting, packet will have been posted to the, website. So you can pull up the packets right from the select board page. You go, oh, Middle Street Bridge, updates for meeting with mayor and council on May 1st. So you click right to there and, let's see that, didn't. I think I clicked the wrong one. It goes right to the backup for that. So this packet is, 125 pages. You don't need to sift through all of that. You can jump to the topic of interest. And, so I think this is a great way, if you're not aware of this, these packets are, it's like an encyclopedia of information. And, we've talked about like creating like an index, but that, we really just don't have the bandwidth to do that. So I think for people who are interested in, keeping an ear to the ground, be aware, when you see the agendas the day before the meeting, you can go right to the packets, you can pull them up, you can see what's in front of the board. You get the same information that's in front of them. All we do is we redact people's personal information. If there's people's, phone number or email, we do take the time to redact that because we don't want have that out on the web. But other than that, it's the same information they have. So, you can attend the meeting or send questions to my office or to any of the board members ahead of time, or after the fact. Hey, I saw this on the agenda, what's in place? I think part of what we're trying to do is just really open the lines of communication because, we really bend over backwards to be as transparent as we possibly can. And I do sometimes feel that I don't think people know that this goes back to when I started. I mean, this is 6 years of packets. So if you want to know what happens, there's a lot here. So I just wanted to make sure this meeting didn't end without specifically promoting that opportunity because I do not think we have done a good enough job making people aware of this. I know we bring it up all the time, but people are busy. So since we have a captive audience, I wanted to make sure I'll leave that.
So it's gonna be a test on this, so,
So, and actually, I mean, even for tonight, we have, later tonight after this portion of the meeting, wraps up, the board's gonna be talking about, the town meeting warrant and potential warrant articles. And so, what's posted here is all the warrant articles received. And not all of those may make the warrant, or if they do, they may make it in a different, it might be somewhat different than what's here, but it's what is in front of the board for the second part of tonight's meeting is right there on the web for anybody to log in and follow what's happening, so.
and we did also add this public comment at the beginning of our agenda, so that's anything. Doesn't mean we'll act on it or discuss it, but it just does give people the opportunity. I know your boards do that. I think they do that. So.
This is actually probably a good opportunity also just to highlight the significant changes that this board, and really I'll credit the chair for really her leadership on this, completely retooled the format of the agenda. Because as you probably recall over the years, it's kind of a long list of things, undifferentiated, not necessarily, we try to make a logical order, but now with these headings, everything's kind of categorized with updates, department updates, board commission, committee updates, action items. So this is great because anything they might vote on is under an action item. Discussion items, these are things that they're going to talk about, but not take action on, and then just correspondence. So these blue are the hyperlinks because it's all linked. But this was a major change that was made in the last year, specifically to make better use of the meeting time, help keep everyone focused on what's kind of a general discussion item as opposed to an action item. So something that might be a discussion item this week might be an action item in 2 weeks because the board needs to chew on it. So that's something that I think was a real step forward that, for those of you who are kind of town government people, it helps you navigate and find what you're looking for. So, I know a lot of people probably tune out in terms of how you format an agenda, but I think it was a big progress, really.
Okay, we really appreciate everybody's attendance. Feel free to send along any comments, questions, or whatever, and, we'll take them up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
I just want to go on record and let's take a burden off the gym and post my own minutes from now on, I promise.
Get your old stuff with that.
Thank you.
We're talking about the town meeting agenda next. Okay, that's right, the farms on there.
Yes.
Okay, hang on.
See action items, vote to close the warrant of fall special.
The motion to close the warrant for the special town meeting, the articles received.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Actually, backing up for the discussion, so there was, got an email sometime this afternoon, I don't know what time that came in, but,
Just one?
well, no, but there was the one with the list of articles, and there was reference to, yeah, so, actually, so there is a FinCom bylaw article now.
Yeah, we got a article request form from Rob this morning.
Yeah, okay.
Did you think something was left off?
No, I didn't, I just hadn't, quite honestly, because when this came in, I just, was tied up most of the time from when this came in to, I hadn't had a chance to really review it, so. I just wanted to take.
The only additional item, from what was sent out, early Tuesday was in terms of the list, is this, Brick Hill water tank repairs.
Okay,
There, then on this FinCom bylaw, the article request form was added. And then the other changes from what went out on Tuesday was on the River Road to reflect the discussion last night's meeting.
okay,
And, we added 3, pages from the, resiliency plan with 3 maps that just kind of help understand what is being talked about. And then on the page pipe stave crosswalk, I did go ahead and create a capital summary sheet for that project, so I added that. It's basically kind of it's kind of information you already know, but in a different format, because it wasn't actually listed as a separate project in the capital program, so.
okay, thanks.
So, yeah, it's that's this one here. But yeah, the motion is just to close the warrant, so I assume you'll have some amount of discussion into
Yeah.
what's gonna be on.
Okay, I'm good there.
Okay,
So-
all in favor?
Bye.
Aye, okay. So then we will move on to, well, so how do we wanna do this? Do you wanna discuss each one? I mean, this is not to vote to approve it, it's whether or
If
not.
there's any we don't think should be on there.
Yeah, and
that's
so
what we decided.
let's just have a short conversation about what criteria would we use to decide that something should not be on there.
It was inappropriate.
Yeah.
I'll make a comment, and I know Angus is aware, and you probably are too, the right to farm bylaw, which Richie and Lisa are here. I'm in favor of the concept, I think the bylaw could be written a lot better, and I provided the feedback a while ago. I will oppose it vigorously at town meeting, but I also think it should be on the warrant. I would not say that it should not be, it should be a decision the town has, so I'm not gonna say no at this point.
Yeah, okay.
Other than that,
Any discussion on any of the other items that people feel should not be on the warrant?
I think the page pipe stave, we are on the cusp of getting 100% design approval with DOT. We do think it would be timely if the funding was approved. It could be put out to bid over the winter, and it would increase the likelihood that we could actually get it constructed next summer. But, and it's the latest step in what's been, probably 4 years of, so it shouldn't be a big surprise that we're gonna be seeking construction funding, but the amount will definitely cause some sticker shock. And, had not been built into the, capital program with an amount. So I do think, given that, and that it will inevitably raise questions of, because it's not just this one, it's, are we gonna do middle high school crossing, it's town center, the way to the river, the library, like potentially if we're looking at. Now, obviously, a major part of the reason we're doing this corridor planning process is to position some of those projects for state and federal funding through the TIP. But to the extent we're gonna be looking for our local residents to pay for some of them. I do think it's gonna raise, questions about, we really ought to update the capital program to build that in. Does that change the amount that we ought to be putting into stabilization to properly fund it? And given that we're only 6 weeks or 7 weeks out from town meeting, I would have no concern if the board saw fit to hold that article to the spring. Just,
I see another issue with that article. And that is, the first word in the way the article defined your page, pipe state crosswalk. And that we don't know, obviously, anything that happens with page is a bunch of years out. But I think there's gonna be reasonable questioning about, how much money do we put into crosswalk when we don't really know yet what it's gonna look like on that side of the street.
I hear that, but I would like to think that this board would be of assistance in kind of rebutting that point of view for a couple of reasons. For one, whether it's a school or some other use, a primary purpose for this crossing is the geometry of the roadway, everything about going back 4 years and the traffic safety audit that we did and the memo Wayne wrote a year before that. The geometry, the site distance, there's a lot of issues, a lot of concerns, whether it gets a lot of traffic or not a lot of traffic. One of the major driving objectives of this from day one was safety of pedestrian and equestrian. Because, in any scenario, you have Pipe State and Mill Pond on the south, you have hundreds of acres of protected land on the north. So I think if it's a school, if it's not a school, to me, that, I don't see that as being, I'm not gonna say it's irrelevant, but I don't think it's determinative. in
Yeah,
terms of-
no, when I'm expecting people.
Some people will say that, I guess my point is like,
Actually, it wasn't so much whether it's a school or something else, or it's more like, do we know that what's currently there for access, locations
Mhm.
is gonna remain the same?
Mhm.
So that, I have no idea if that will change or not. But I anticipate that somebody's gonna be asking that question.
and I guess my answer would be, it's fully within the town's control, because even if the town went, decided to go in a different direction with the site and made the site available for a third party, for development, for whatever, it could absolutely, we've got the housing authority, that's a static thing, this driveway is a static thing.
DPW.
We've got the water, and the town owns the property, so it has every ability to, and logically, it's, hard to see that someone would have a different. Anyhow, I think that's an answerable question. People will ask that question, of course,
Well,
but
we can't bury our heads in fear for the next 10 years over this building. Even if you assume right now, the building is going to do something else. You've got an obligation to take care of it at a significant level for whatever duration.
Yeah.
And like you said, even if the school's not there, you're still gonna have the housing, the DPW, water tank, you've got these stuff in the other.
trails on the north and the south.
Yeah, so you can't
Yeah.
walk away from this. I don't have a problem pushing it off to the spring if you think that's a better
I
proposal.
mean, I have mixed feelings. I think it's a good project. I think, we've pushed hard to get the permitting done at this time. We pushed the consultant hard to get us this cost estimate. They delivered. It's ready. I know what it's going to generate and,
It might be more timely in the fall, because the spring, we know we get loaded up with
that's a good
60
point.
hours.
Yeah, that's a
We've got
good point.
a fairly light agenda. And what this will do very gently is start that page conversation so that people know that there is something else coming there, but, you know.
Yeah.
To have the page proposal come out at the same time, at this is gonna, you know, everybody's gonna have resistance right off the bat, but maybe it's a general conversation by addressing this first,
Mhm.
so.
Also, as you know, once the warrant's closed, you know, you put something, if you put something on tonight, you can always take it off. You don't need to actually sign and post a warrant until 14 days prior to the town meeting, so you have another nearly month. So, you know, you could put it on. We're gonna have to go to capital committee anyway with a couple of these others, with the river road and potentially the water tank repairs. So maybe you keep it in, and then if it starts to become like a real time sink, we say, okay, it's a great project, but you know, we can't chase our own tails without compromising other things we're
It's,
doing.
it's gonna be a time sink one way or the other. I'd
Yeah.
rather see it the time sink now than in the spring when you've got, what do we have, 60-something articles last spring?
It won't be that this year, but
Okay, so 50.
yeah.
So this would be just, if you could take one monkey off your shoulder
Yeah.
right now, I think.
It is
it's all-
timely. I think we have the information. The information that's in your packet is complete. We had a remote meeting just in the last, week and a half with TEC and with, you know, a senior person at Mass DOT. It is on the cusp of being, fully permitted. So if the funding was in place this fall, we could put it out to bid. We could award a contract in early 2025, and we could.
We're ready to go in the spring rather than
Construction.
waiting for another cycle.
Correct, yeah, so there's advantages to go forward. I just wanted to make sure I'm clear with the board. If you see fit to postpone it, I will not have hard feelings about that. But if you want to keep it on, I think it's a great proposal. I do.
I don't
think
see a
it's
reason to
fair.
postpone it.
Okay, all right,
That's me.
okay.
So is there any possibility of, whittling down the price?
Well, you know, I just got this Tuesday, and I haven't scrutinized it, and it's kind of not really my wheelhouse
Yeah,
to do so. It's an opinion of probable cost. It's not a,
right.
you know, it's so the, you know, that TEC has told us they have confidence in this number.
And all of that is required, I guess it's more of a scoping question than a.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing, if we keep it on, I think we could have them in at a meeting to present it, because they understand these details in a way that we don't. I do know, you know, one of the things that involves moving a drainage structure and, you know, those kinds of things, which are obviously big ticket items. There's a lot here.
Any state funding available, or is it a state highway?
So up to this point, and I put this into the capital request, which I don't pretend anyone's had time to read, because I just sent it out earlier today, but to get to this point, we have got $55,000 of state funding, in addition to about 33,000 that's been expended so far locally. The 33,000 includes some of the corridor planning work as well, not just this intersection, but there's been state funding to get it this far. It's not gonna be funded, the state's not gonna fund construction through like the TIP, because that's a 5-year process, and this project's not even on the TIP. Christine has done some initial poking around of potential grant programs. She just sent me an email just yesterday with a link, and she, you know, she said there might be things that we might be able to go after. I haven't had time to really look at what she sent me, other than, what I just told you, so. I think it's gonna be an uphill climb to get the state to fund it, for a number of reasons. For one thing, we're the ones who've taken it this far. You know, it's not the common, you know, the typical funding path for state and federal money is the TIP. That's a 5-year rolling process where they update the TIP every year. And this project is not on there. And also, one thing that I know would increase our competitiveness for state discretionary grants is being certified as a complete streets community. We are not. That's something we have talked about at a staff level, but isn't something we've had the bandwidth to take on. But we're not a complete streets community, and that's something the state's gonna look at in discretionary grants. So it's not impossible, but it's a long shot. You know, I don't wanna handicap the odds without doing more research, but, my gut feeling is it's a long shot. That's true.
Okay, so what, you wanna leave it on for now?
I would like to on YouTube. I think it's a great way to do it. I'd rather get rid of it in the fall than in the spring.
Yeah, I'm just, that's a sticker shock for me as well.
Well, that's for me too, but
Yeah,
you know,
so,
well, it's a big, we'll find out what the real number is.
yeah,
If you don't fund anything that's not on the warrant, we don't know the basis to start, so. I'm not saying I'm really thrilled about spending that kind of money,
yeah,
but you know what the, hopefully the worst case scenario is.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, one other thing I just point out is with the corridor project as a whole, let me find the map I'm looking for. So as you know, we identified 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nodes, and then since that time, we actually added a 6th one with the way to the river, Ocean Meadow crossing.
Mhm.
So right now, this page in Pipe State has always been ahead of the others in terms of timing because of earmarks, and we've been able to kind of move it forward with that. The next one kind of in line is the middle high school because of an earmark. We have a kickoff visit a week from Monday with a consultant and MVPC on that one. And then we also have an earmark to do conceptual planning for traffic calming in the Elwell Square.
Is there a sunset on that?
It's 2026. Yeah, it's state ARPA money, so.
So the end of FY 26.
End of calendar 26.
Calendar.
Yeah, so that's why we've it's been on our list for a while, but we haven't accelerated because we knew we had a little more breathing on that. So we have, Page is way far ahead, whereas, it's just about 100% permitted. At the end of this work, all we're gonna have is a conceptual plan. The end of this work, all we're gonna have is a conceptual plan. There are many steps and takes time and money. But I guess I bring that up because if there are grants that we could compete for, we don't have any shortage of projects. We're gonna be, to implement anything close to all of these crossings, we're gonna have to put some local money into it, so.
And so does that have the training field? Was that what the second?
Yeah, yep,
Okay.
yep.
All right. I guess I wasn't aware, I mean, I know it's a concern, but I didn't realize it was one of the identified areas.
Oh, yeah.
So on this one too, if you put it in with the Springtown meeting, it's gonna be competing with other projects and other dollars.
Mhm.
So if you want it to succeed, it probably has the highest success rate in the fall, just as a thought.
Yeah.
The fall warrant should be the biggest thing.
Well, I don't think we lose anything by just keeping it on and,
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with keeping on. There'll be more discussion, obviously. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Any other ones that you might wanna take out,
No, I have lots of questions and comments on all of them,
but they should be.
I think the town should have the opportunity to go them all.
I think in the past, the only time, well, since I've been on the board, is just if we felt that the use of the funds was not appropriate.
One thing I just wanna bring to your attention on the tree removal on River Road, I did talk to Butch earlier today. I feel that number is very low, and he did acknowledge that he brought forward the 50,000 proposal, basically not wanting people to have sticker shock, but I said, it's gonna cost more than that. And he is gonna, he actually, this afternoon, he was calling a couple of tree people to have them come out and kind of drive the corridor, understand the town's objectives, and give him not bid pricing, but to kind of ground truth that. He's off next week, he's on vacation, he'll be back a week from Monday. And so we agreed we would meet that week and really fine tune that number, but I wanted to tell you all tonight, if it's up to me, that number's gonna go up, because I think it's gonna be a lot.
So
I think
is
that's
it a list?
really low.
He thought that it could be, most of the work he felt could be done from the road. But, we'll see what the vendors
Yeah.
say, or the prospective vendors. And also,
It's
as
just
you
drop the
know.
trees and let them float downstream, right?
I was thinking
That's-
that, but I
that's
wasn't
all-
gonna say because of the consequences.
It's also gonna need to be permitted, and I don't. My gut feeling is I don't think we need any funding to get it permitted. I think with the staff that we have, we can file with Natural Heritage, we have to file with Concom, we can file with Concom. It's gonna take time. It's not like these trees are gonna be cut this winter, you know, it's gonna take time for all of that, but to go through all of that effort, you know, I wanna make sure that we have enough funding to really make a dent in it. So,
Yeah, there's a lot, well, we'll see what we come up with, but it seems to me there are a number of trees that, and they're also not on necessarily on town land. In fact, they're probably not on town land, but there are a number of trees that I don't think you get to in front of the road. I don't think, you know, they're in a place where, there's just no access from the road.
yeah, yeah.
I think.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to leave all 14 articles on the whole town meeting warrant as rated on our listing.
Sorry.
All right, any further discussion? In favor?
Aye.
So thank you, a related item is gonna be, and we don't need to decide this tonight, but, the date of review. So my feeling is anything that can be ready for Monday and where the sponsor is available to attend on Monday, let's try to get those done. So for instance, like the Right to Farm, I don't know if well, actually, I guess we got some sponsors here.
Yeah, I mean,
Like anything like that would be a good one, in my opinion, to get that done Monday. The OSRP, I met
Well,
with Clay today. I know CPA hasn't voted on it.
I think we should wait. This is.
Okay. All right, it's just gonna end up being, because Butch is on vacation next week, so both of his articles will be the 26th, the water will be the 26th, the free cash for the tax rate will be the 26th. Middle Street Bridge is,
River Road resiliency really.
like, a lot of it's gonna go to the 26th. So I feel like anything we can get done Monday.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be a really quick. I don't think we're staring the hunch by doing the open space early.
No, maybe not, but,
So what about the crosswalk? Are we waiting for any more information on that or?
no, but I don't know if FinCom's gonna wanna act before CIC.
Oh, okay.
And I think if CIC is gonna be expecting to also review, River Road and the water tank, you know, they'll need to get a meeting on the calendar, hopefully just one.
We can do the prior year's bills.
Prior to spells, it's easy.
The signage should, no problem.
Well, but that one's not even, the funding proposal's not even submitted.
Yeah,
yet.
I mean,
It's
that's
just-
really a placeholder.
Yeah,
It's free.
Yeah, I mean, is it worth meeting if we're only doing those three?
I think that's a good question, because,
Yeah.
I got a good answer. No.
I mean, you know, but keep in mind, you guys know all this, because you're here week after week, the FinCom, even if it's a 45-minute meeting, it might be good just because that way, at least they could talk generally about some of it, even. if
Yeah,
they're
it
not-
actually might be good, sort of.
Practice.
Well, not practice, but we could have limited conversation on some of the issues that we would talk about more in depth later. Cause maybe there's some obvious questions that people will have and.
Yeah, to make us better prepared on the 26th.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
good.
Cause there's gonna be, I mean, some of these are gonna get a fair amount of conversation, I think,
So is the CIC scheduled to meet between now
Yes.
and?
yeah.
Oh, they are. What was
Yeah,
the date?
actually, maybe you don't know, I mentioned this, a while back, and I think you had it, you may have had a conflict, but, hang on a sec. September 19th. So Thursday next week.
So I think it needs to be impressed that it has to be a one meeting consideration. I mean, we can't afford to have that drag into the second meeting, right?
Is that at 7:30?
Yes.
Wonderful. I can be there.
What was the conflict? Is it,
Let me check. Oh, no, it is. It's, I think it's my daughter's, it's not on my work phone. I always have to remember to check my personal calendar.
Oh, I-
It's Bagnell, back to school night, but
Don't you have an option?
that's from 6 now, it's just that night, but that's 6 to 7:30, so
we have it? As long as you don't mind doing that.
I'll be there. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
But so let's see, we're talking River Road. So I gotta check with Christine. We're talking, the water tank, gotta check with Mark, and then for the, crosswalk, I would be there for that.
So it sounds like the right to farm bylaw will be Monday night.
We're talking this next Monday.
Yeah, yeah, with the FinCom, these are joint meetings to consider warrant articles.
One question on that one that I have the same question on the tax title bylaw, obviously, these are, they're not, it doesn't say like what section of the bylaws, they're not in the form of bylaws. I'm hoping that you and the FinCom will just feel that this is sufficient to make a recommendation, and understanding that getting it into like the more formal, like what section it'll be in and so forth, that's not gonna be done by Monday.
I don't think it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, I know on the tax title one, that's gonna be in the finances section of the bylaws, but it's, I'm sure we can figure out.
I mean, that'll just be a new.
Yeah.
section, right?
Yeah. But rather than tack it on at the end, it might make sense to
Oh,
put it and then renumber the others or
Okay.
something, but we can figure all that out.
The timeframe is gonna be really tight on, the River Road.
Yeah. Well, right, because,
Yeah, we talked about it last night at length at the, CCRC, and, Christine has a call schedule, which I think you've already responded to.
Yeah.
You responded to that, but, with Michelle Rowden next Wednesday.
Right.
And the CIC is the next day, so, and, the conversation with Michelle Rowden will probably inform significantly. Yeah. It's just the way the timeframe works out.
So Rick, is there an option to wait until the Springtown meeting for this, or is the grant cycle in
We need,
February?
we need to have, our matching grant funding in place before we can apply.
Okay,
And,
and what's the application deadline, is it February?
yeah, I don't remember exactly, February, March timeframe, if I remember right. And we went through this last time around, and, we had to do it. This time, it's, 10% matching. We have much less skin in the game relative to the overall cost of the project, but the overall cost of the project, I think, it probably should be several times what, it was last time.
All right,
That's a good question. Do we know when the ZBA is meeting again to address?
October 30th.
Will that be on our agenda before that meeting?
Yes, the ZBA has asked the select board for some input in its capacity as roadway commissioners.
Okay, that's.
So whether that's on for the 26th or a subsequent meeting, there is a little breathing room with the postponement to October 30th. ZBA met last night, they formally accepted the request for continuation, and the applicant authorized in writing an extension of the normal timeframes for action on a variance application, so everything's kind of procedurally in order. We're aware that the applicant is working toward a revised proposal that we expect is going to include proposing some amount of extension, less than 200 feet, but I'm hearing maybe 40 to 50 foot range, but we'll see. Once we have an official submittal, that'll be sent around the ZBA, posted to the ZBA website, and we told that there was only one neighbor there last night, but we told them that once we have an official updated application, it'll be posted to the web, and you guys will be the first to know.
Anything else? Correspondence, right?
Adjourn.
Right.
Holy, wait a second.
Okay, bye.